So we're getting ready to take the CL on its first road trip. We're going to be taking it from our home in Vermont to Booth Bay Harbor. And before we go on the trip, I want to make sure that everything's in order. So we're going to check the tire pressure and we're going to check the oil and just make sure that there's nothing that would possibly happen during the road trip. So the car currently has 97,000 miles on it. Looks like the oil looks pretty good. Now we'll check the tire pressure. Something my father always told me about cars is that you always keep a tire gauge in your car. This car predates TPMS, so the only accurate way to know is if you keep one of these guys in your glove box. The Acura CL is 32 psi front and rear, which makes it pretty easy. And we are at 33. Close enough. A couple of other things that I always do when I go on a road trip is I inspect the belts, make sure that there's no signs of cracking, wearing, fraying. And I know from experience on this car that I've actually inspected these belts just recently. This car underwent a lot of work, and so the belts I know are pretty good. That's just general good advice. You want to check your belts before you head out. Another area to check would be your coolant reservoir. You want to make sure that there's plenty of coolant in there, which there is. And you always want to top it off. I'm cross-threading this right now, it seems. So let's fix that. There we go. I always open this up too, because I always want to inspect the underneath of the cap. And that looks normal. Other than that, you might want to take a look at your air filter. You also might want to take a look at a couple other things before you set out on a long drive. But this car, like I said, just went through a lot of work and there's really nothing it needs. So just basic fluids, belts, and we're good to go. Tire pressures looked good all the way around. So the next footage that you see should be our journey onward to Maine. So we made it back from Booth Bay Harbor without an issue. My wife and I drove 5 hours in this car, and it was smooth and very easy to control. The cruise control made it very manageable for the 5-hour journey. And even while we were in Booth Bay Harbor, we noticed a lot of people looking at the car and inquiring of what this car was. I think the license plate had a little bit to do with it, considering it's CL6 SPD. We noticed that when we went out to dinner one night, that there was a couple people who were looking at the car as we entered it, and even noticed that when we started it up, it had a little bit of an exhaust tone, which is unique to the CL Type S. This car is just a fantastic to drive and fantastic to own. Highly recommend this car, even though it's 17 years old, to anybody who happens to come across it and is a Honda or an Acura enthusiast. I think the car, with its unique characteristics, sets it apart, and it's even faster today than a Integra Type R, which makes it quite unique.